Hello, and welcome to the Breaking Down the Adoption Barrier series. This is going to be a really exciting 6-part series on when sales enablement isn't actually enabling sales and how you can leverage your investment in Salesforce.com to improve sales results. This is a joint session being presented by Soar Performance Group as well as Prolifiq based on a session that we delivered at Dreamforce this past year. My name is John Thaxton, and I'm going to be your host, taking you through over the next 6 sessions, sharing a little bit around this topic of breaking down the adoption barrier and how you can drive more value from your sales enablement investments. So let's talk about why we're here today and what we're really going to be focused on. So one of the things that we found shocking is that over the past 4 years, organizations with a dedicated sales enablement function has gone from 20% to 60%. And you would think with that investment and that level of investment being put into sales enablement, you would see performance improving. But not only do we not see performance improving, during this time period, the percentage of reps making quota actually went down. So from our perspective, we really wondered as a group between our two organizations, why is this happening? Why is there more and more investment being put into tools, technologies, training, internal headcount, and staff, yet the needle's not really moving in terms of performance? So what we're going to explore over this series is why is this happening and what can you do about it as a sales leader or a sales enablement leader to help drive a different result in your organization. What are some of the things that you're going to take away from this series? One is a point of view on why sales enablement isn't driving the kind of value it potentially could for your organization. Secondly, we're going to share and explore as a group some examples of how other organizations are overcoming barriers to realizing value from sales enablement. And then thirdly, we're going to provide you with some frameworks, some tools, some actionable insights that you can take and use within your own organization to drive faster intake and adoption of enablement initiatives. With that, I'm going to transition and introduce myself briefly, and then introduce as well some of our other speakers who are going to be sharing their perspectives and real customer stories throughout this series. My name is John Thaxton. As mentioned, I'm the VP of Client Engagement for Soar Performance Group. I'm going to turn it over now to Bill Green from Prolifiq to introduce himself.
Thanks, John. Bill Green with Prolifiq, a Salesforce AppExchange partner. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer, so responsible for go-to-market. I've been a career B2B sales professional, spent many years at Salesforce directly, and I have a very specific view of how to unlock the value of Salesforce and unlock and maximize selling time. And I'm looking forward to sharing some ideas around enablement and adoption today. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. And I'm now going to ask our other participant and other subject matter expert, Charlie Thaxton, to share a little bit on his background before we move forward.
Thanks, John, and looking forward to this series in exploring how do we get more out of our sales enablement efforts. That's work that I have spent years in with clients focused on how do they drive a better result through their sales enablement efforts. And number 2 is how do they align those sales enablement efforts with the strategy of the organization. Look forward to our conversation over the next 6 sessions.
Thanks, Charlie. So real quick, some background on our organizations before we jump in and talk a little bit around the premise of this webinar series. So our organization, Soar Performance Group, we help sales organizations drive next levels of performance through an approach that we refer to as sales capital management, which is really all around how do you align your sales talent, your sales team, and your customer engagement approach to drive new and differentiated results with your clients. And we're very, very pleased to partner with Prolifiq and partner together and bring some of our best practices around customer engagement to bear through some of their technology and the really exciting work they do there. Bill, would you like to share a little bit around Prolifiq and you guys' organization?
Yeah, thanks, John. So Prolifiq is laser focused on what we call straightforward sales enablement. And so we set out to create a very pragmatic suite of capabilities to help sales professionals and selling organizations sell more and slash administration around selling, such as duplicate data entry or learning a different user interface or waiting for a large IT project to bring to bear the automation of very valuable selling motions. The two flagship products in our suite are Prolifiq Crush and Prolifiq Ace, and these are really centered around two valuable selling motions that sales professionals all around the world using Salesforce experience every day. One of them is account planning, which typically is done outside of Salesforce. And so Prolifiq Crush brings that into Salesforce. And the other motion is looking for valuable and relevant content to advance discussions, sales cycles, and improve close rates. And that typically is found on hard drives or in other content storage engines. And so we've brought the concept of a Spotify and Yelp-like experience into Salesforce to very quickly find the most relevant content. And so together, we have been thrilled to partner with Soar to really bring the three legs of the stool around enablement and adoption and success, which is obviously technology, the people, and the process. Clearly, there's been situations I'm sure you can relate to where you think technology is going to take you to where you want to go as far as change management, or if you've just got the right people, or if you change your process. But it really is the mix of all three of those that are going to deliver and ensure the highest level of success. And that's what we're going to explore today.
Thanks, Bill, for sharing that. So what we're going to talk about now is really the core of our perspective and viewpoint around why new approaches and innovations aren't adopted. And so if you go back to the very first thing we shared today, one of the things that's happening in the marketplace is there's more and more and more investment in sales enablement as a function, yet we're not seeing that shift in performance. And so our view is that the real challenge there is around how do you actually drive adoption and uptake of new innovations and new approaches. And when you look at that challenge around how to get value out of sales enablement, we really see one of the biggest challenges being how do you drive adoption, how do you drive behavior change? So it was really interesting as we were talking about this topic, preparing for Dreamforce. I was having a discussion with Charlie at our office one day, and he said, John, you know, as we're preparing for this, there's a really interesting book called The Diffusion of Innovation, which is all about why are new ideas adopted or not adopted. And one of the things that's really fascinating in that book is they actually did a study of a village in South America, and there was a 5-year project to try to get that village to boil water, to have clean drinking water. And over that 5 years, even through all the time that they invested in trying to get this group of people to actually drink clean water, which seems like would be such a no-brainer, in spite of all that, they weren't able to get them to adopt. And so we took a slant at that and said, that's pretty interesting. I wonder if some of these things might apply to this topic of sales enablement. And it turns out there was a huge correlation. And so when we look at that, there's really 5 core reasons that new innovations, new approaches aren't adopted. One is compatibility with values. So this is really all about what someone values regardless of situation. So what do they care about regardless of the situation? So if you think about a sales organization, they're almost always going to value how do they do a great job for their customers, how do they maximize their comp plan, and how do they really perform well in their role. So those are things that regardless of situation, someone is going to strongly have a viewpoint around. The next one is compatibility with beliefs. So one of the things you might be wondering is, what is the difference between values and beliefs? That difference is that beliefs are situationally specific, meaning they're about a specific situation or a specific example. So does someone believe that a specific selling approach, a specific organizational initiative is really going to make a difference for them and their success and their customers? That's very much situation specific as compared to values, which really are transcendent. The third item is compatibility with past experiences. So how does a new approach or a new innovation fit with what someone has experienced in the past? And does it reinforce a positive past experience, or does it come in conflict as with something that maybe they experienced in the past that was more negative? The fourth reason new innovations aren't adopted is that opinion leaders aren't engaged. And opinion leaders oftentimes aren't necessarily the folks that are organizationally the leader, but it's those people who drive a lot of the collective thought, maybe are a top performer in the organization, those people who really drive a lot of the group opinion within the organization, that they're perhaps not engaged in the development or rollout of a new initiative. Then the last reason is focus on the innovation versus focus on the client. So oftentimes when a new innovation or a new approach is launched, there's so much focus on how exciting, how great, how neat the new thing is that there's not enough focus on the actual end user or the client and how they're going to apply and actually enable the approach in their environment. So as we go through this series, we're going to have a deep dive on each of these, where we're going to have both Charlie and Bill share some real life stories from the trenches working with sales teams and sales enablement teams around how they have overcome each of these barriers that have prevented adoption and uptake. So what's in it for you as we go through this webinar series is really some practical ideas around how to make sure that investment you're making in sales enablement is making a difference in your business, driving the right kind of adoption, and most importantly, driving a differentiated result for yourself and your customers. So as a call to action, two things. One is we're going to be publishing a series of these. So if you like what you heard, you believe this would be valuable, be on the lookout for the rest of this series where we'll take a deep dive into each of the reasons that new innovations aren't adopted. If you want to get a deeper perspective on your organization and how you can increase your effectiveness, feel free to reach out to our organization for a free leading practices briefing on sales enablement, where we'll share with you what top performing sales enablement organizations are doing differently than others. Bill, would you like to share some of the ways that folks can reach out to you guys?
You bet, John. Thanks. And so we invite you to test drive Prolifiq Crush and Prolifiq Ace, and you can find that on our website or on the Salesforce App Exchange as well.
Thanks so much, everyone, for being with us today, and keep a lookout for our next installation on the series, compatibility with values, and sharing some real examples of how organizations are taking that into account and moving the needle in their organization.